All right, we're live.
Hello, my name is Earl Folks, and I'm the President CEO of the Center for Black Equity. And I'm here today as part of the National Transgender Visibility March programming for Pride to talk about racism in the racism in the general LGBT community. We are very fortunate to have a panel, a group of leaders from all over the country who have been doing work in our community through their Black Pride organizations and other community-based projects that they're working on to build up our community for ourselves, by ourselves, to protect ourselves. And before I do that, I want you to know who's on the phone, who's on the video chat today with us. So I'm going to ask everyone to go one by one, say your name, what city you're from, and that way we can get through everyone so we can see who's all on the phone with us today.
My name is
Hi, I'll
Jaron.
start. My name is Kenny Hutton, and I represent DC Black Pride.
My name is Jaron Totten, Detroit, Michigan. I serve as social outreach coordinator and legislative advocacy specialist at LGBT Detroit. I'm also the program coordinator for Hotter Than July, which is Detroit Black Pride.
D. Rashawn Gilmore with Blackout in Kansas City, Missouri, where I serve as the founder and CEO.
Tony Kristen Walker. I'm the Director of Provision Community Partnerships for AIDS Alabama and also one of the co-founders of Birmingham Black Pride in Birmingham, Alabama.
Regina Duggins, Charleston Black Pride, founder of Charleston Black Pride.
Earl Thomas, Indiana Pride, president of Indiana Pride of Color of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Darius Jones, president of South Carolina Black Pride, Columbia, South Carolina.
Dr. David, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm Lee Soldier, executive director of New York City Black Pride.
David Clemens, executive director of Tri-State Black Pride, Memphis, Tennessee.
I am Reverend Lisette Cross. They call me Reverend L. I am the co-founder and executive director of Black Pride RVA.
I think I was muted. I'm Gwendolyn Clemens. I am the chairwoman for Tri-State Black Pride in Memphis, Tennessee for girls.
Anyone else? Assuming silence means consent, and I'm going to move on.
Well, actually, hello everyone. I'm Reverend Dr. Jose Miguel Roman, and for the past 12 years, I've had the privilege of being an advisor to the leadership of the Center for Black Equity.
And my name is Reverend Arda Itez. I am here as an ally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This has been a very difficult time for all of us. I don't have to remind you what's happened over the last, not just 12 days, but over the last few months with the COVID-19 pandemic, with the killing of Mr. George Floyd, with other murders of transgender men and women around the country, which have occurred in the last couple of weeks. We're just going from pillar to post, and it's just been a very emotional time for me. I'm speaking for myself. And I know, having spoken to a number of you out there, that it's a difficult time for you as well. So before we start the roundtable, I've asked Dr. Roman, Reverend Dr. Roman, to actually give us a reflection, and then we can have a moment of silence for those who have lost their lives, and then we can move on and set their spirits correct so we can have a fruitful discussion. Reverend Dr. Roman, would you mind doing that for me, please?
It would be an honor. To reflect on this moment, it's almost overwhelming. We began, of course, at the beginning of this year with COVID-19, one of the worst health crises to confront modern America. And at the beginning, it seemed to be hitting everyone equally. Now, as we enter the tail end of this condition, theoretically, because in reality, the tail end most probably won't be with us until most probably sometime in 2021, if we're lucky. We discover that, in fact, it has hit Black and Latino communities disproportionately. It is our people who are suffering the brunt of this disease, because it is always our people who suffer the brunt of any health condition, because it is our people who quite often do not have access to primary and secondary health care. The condition led to the closing of the American economy, and who has suffered that the most? Once again, African American, Latino, and working class communities. It is our people who, even before the closing of the economy, had an unemployment rate that in some cases actually equaled that of what existed during the Great Depression. And all that this condition has done is essentially increased and expanded that suffering exponentially. Then, of course, we have the massacring of a man on public television, in media, the dehumanization of yet another African American at the hands of the police, and the rising up of anger and communities that say no more. And on top of all of that, what we have essentially is not only a lack of leadership, but a national leadership that fundamentally is grounded in white supremacy, in prejudice, in hatred, in the devaluation and dehumanization of all our people. The time has come for not merely the deepest level of reflection, but above all, the time has come for action. And that is why we are all here. And I am so deeply, deeply privileged to be part of this conversation. I'd like for us to take a few moments to truly reflect on all that has been lost and on all the suffering that we and our communities have experienced. And so I'm going to ask everyone who is participating in this conversation to respectfully enter into their prayer space, their place of meditation, their place of contemplation, that we could have just a few moments to truly, truly honor all that has been lost and all that must be done. We honor the lives of the men, women, children, and persons who have been lost to COVID-19. We honor the families and communities that have been affected by this condition. We recall and honor the lives of all the men, women, children, and persons that have been affected by the collapse of the American economy. We reflect on all that pain. We honor and reflect and memorialize the lives of all the men, women, children, and persons who at the hands of police and at the hands of other authorities in our society have been dehumanized, devalued, and destroyed. And we honor the spirit of not merely compassion and wisdom, but the spirit of righteous indignation that lives not as a God outside of us, but as a God inside of us, a spirit within us that we seek to connect with today as we engage in this discussion, as we seek collaboration and community moving forward in seeking to heal a broken world and make a better life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Roman, for those. Now let's get to the heart of the issue. We've obviously been just talking about racism and the impact of racism on the Black community. Yet in this dialogue, there's not been a lot of space created to talk about racism, specifically in the white LGBT community. and those who've been doing this work for a long time and those who've been doing this work for a short time, we know that as people of color, as African Americans, we have our feet in two worlds. We have our feet in the Black community, which often is we're subject to dehumanization because we're queer, LGBTQ, and homophobia and transphobia, which for us is extremely dangerous, especially for our trans siblings who have to live the danger every day they walk out of their homes. They have to determine which route they're going to take. They're going to determine, they have to suffer indignities at the supermarket, in the post office, every time they walk out. Then we believe that because we're all queer, we're all LGBTQ, that we would be welcome into the gay experience and the predominantly white gay experience, and that's not been the case. And we've suffered extreme racism. I know I have over the years, and I know you do as well. And so the first question I'm asking to our esteemed roundtable participants is, how has racism impacted your work in your community? And give specific examples, if you could, please.
Well, Earl, this is Jaron. I am very well aware that Black Prides and Black LGBT orgs were formed out of not being celebrated, or Blackness not being celebrated in traditional or mainstream LGBT plus spaces. In the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, we knew that resources and information was not reaching the Black LGBT plus community. And so I know here, Black Pride was formed to, one, mourn their dead, and then two, to celebrate the fact that they had made it through another year without contracting HIV and or dying. We didn't see the government take a big stance on HIV and AIDS until, white gay men protested in DC, and Nancy Reagan cried on the Senate floor because, her best friend and hairdresser died of HIV. And so these are kind of the things that have led us to this point, to the formation of Black Prides, Black LGBT orgs. And so I'm proud to serve in North America's largest Black founded and led LGBT nonprofit. I think that locally and nationally, but very much so locally, we set a standard for the community here, and that's something that I'm very thankful for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those remarks and reminding us of our history. Thank you.
Hey, Earl, this is Tony from Birmingham Black Pride.
Hey, Tony.
I think that one thing that we have to do when we talk about racism, unfortunately, is we have to define what racism is. I find myself in conversations not just with white people, but also with Black people about what the definition of racism is. And I think we tried to simplify it too much. So before we even talk about the response to it, we have to know what it is. So racism is not someone not liking you just because you're Black. And I hate when people call Black people racist, because by the definition of what it really is, we cannot be, because racism is a construct set up to advantage white people while disadvantaging Black people. So like, it's very frustrating trying to talk to even some of our own Black people about this, because that was a kind of racist response. I'm like, there's no way we can be racist. So I want to start with that. But as it pertains,
Thank you.
So as it pertains to the way that we encounter racism, we can encounter racism on ways that when you bring it up, people don't think of it as racism. They think about it as preference or choice. So when you have a city like Birmingham with no Black-owned clubs in it, we go to white-owned clubs. We get no saggy pants, no hats, the whole thing, like no Black folks allowed, first of all. Then you walk in and you don't even get the same service at the bar. You hear no music that you like, but then they'll say that they're welcoming. No, you're not. You're tolerating, because you've done nothing to center my experience, as a person. I'm not even talking about as a Black person, but just as a person. So Birmingham Black Pride was formed out of a necessity for us to find a space for Black and brown people, regardless of how you identify on the spectrum. So like, you know, racism actually started what we do, and it keeps it going because you can't seem to get through people's head that just because you build something doesn't mean it's for everyone. You know, it's that whole all lives matter bull crap. You know, all lives don't matter until all lives really matter. And our lives don't matter. So it's offensive when people say that.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Earl.
Hey, I just wanted to jump on real quick. This is Reverend L with Black Pride RVA, because in similar way here in Richmond, Virginia, our Black Pride Festival was sparked by the exact very similar dynamic that Tony is referring to. And I think that while racism is pervasive globally, there is an interesting way in which racism shows up in our localities. And living in the seat of the Confederacy, it has been more than a notion. And so for us as the team of Black Pride RVA and myself as the co-founder, we have experienced racism in, you know, in those kind of like obvious ways that Tony already highlighted. But I wanted to just raise up the subtle ways, right? The question of why do we need two prides? The question of, you know, well, anytime we hold a Black Pride RVA event, or anytime we are sponsoring an event, like we were just part of a Black and prideful march that just happened yesterday. And the predominating question that comes from well-meaning white folks and non-Black folks is, can we show up? Can we come? And I'm tired of the question. Don't ask it no more. Go talk to your white people, go talk to your non-Black people, because that is how racism shows up.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend L.
I'm out of order right now, but thank you for saying that, because that gets on my nerves. Like, well, how can we help? Bring your ass to the thing. Like, what else do you need to do? Like, how can we help? Like, we're exclusive. Like that, we were started because you're exclusive in everything you do. But how can we help? We're not you. We're not you. We are trying to be open. Thank you so much for that. I'm sorry for being inappropriate, but oh my God.
No, I just wanted to add that thanks for bringing that up. You know, Tony, what you spoke on, and Reverend Gladys, sorry, I thank y'all, because Charleston faces that very much. Being it the holy city, quote unquote. Starting Charleston Black Pride a year ago, I got a lot of pushback. I was also previously on the Charleston Pride Board. And some of my reasons was stepping down from my position as secretary was those kind of things. Looking at adding all-inclusive flag. I mean, yes, I want to see brown and Black stripes, regardless of how others of color may feel about it, but it holds a lot of weight. And people look visually at how they're going to associate to certain things. Being boisterous, you know, speaking out on issues. We don't have Black clubs down here, LGBTQ clubs. So when we go, you know, we're always looked at, watch what we're doing, or we have to put in requests for certain music that we may have, or, you know, if we do go, drag kings and queens are being tokenized a lot in some of the spaces. So, you know, entertainment purposes, we are used at the prides. So I was like, I really wanted to be something when Charleston Black Pride has something, it's a place of healing, that place of recognition, that place of home, family kind of sense. And where they can come together, even with their small businesses, we can uplift and empower doing our pride events, or even any events that we're doing throughout the year. So that was just a different way that bringing Charleston Black Pride to Charleston was very important for me. But I agree. I mean, there's still a lot of work to be done, but our allies and can definitely come along. And if you know of any financial backings, that's another way that you can help us to prosper, being that fairly new prides are starting out. Of course, we don't know, but that doesn't mean we're not going to start it. But that's ways that you can help. And we don't have to tell you how to do that. And we're not apologizing for who we are.
I just,
well, okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add a perspective here that manifests in how racism looks here in Kansas City, Missouri. So, we're in the Midwest, and the Midwestern culture, just broadly speaking, especially the Central Plains, if you will, is very subtle. We call it Kansas City nice, where it looks like on the surface that they're being sweet, but underneath there's always some undercurrent of racism or indignation. And that's what I wanted to talk about here, the way that, to your question, Earl, racism shows up a lot in the mainstream LGBT community. And I do a lot of trainings about what I call racism under the rainbow. One of the ways it shows up here is that it is subtle, it is sinister, but it is structural. And when you begin to attack those specific elements, it manifests in indignation from white folks, many times who are either white LGBTQ folk or who are supposed allies. And so that indignation looks like, how dare you set up a separate something else? How dare you seek to be autonomous and to sustain yourselves? I mean, just last year in August, we were very fortunate to host the CB's convening, and many of you were here, and it was such an honor. But I will tell you that there was some backlash, because how can they do that? And so I think that one of the things that we're going to continue to confront, not just us in Kansas City, but all of us, is that backlash around, who do you think you are? How dare you stand up for yourself? And then how dare you tell me where I fit in when I'm used to the whole world being my oyster because I'm white and I'm here. And I think sometimes there's this sense that among white LGBTQ folks that there's this shared oppression. And to some extent, I would agree with Bayard Rustin that all oppression is linked. But in a very large way, white folks who live under the rainbow allow themselves to check out often. So I'm oppressed as long as I can't get married like my white straight counterpart. I'm oppressed as long as I'm getting my health care taken away, or I can't serve in the military, or whatever those things are. But they draw the line at saying, but I'm gonna look out for my Black trans siblings. I'm gonna look out for Black queer folk who are dealing with other issues around racism, just more broadly in this country. So I guess just those 2 points, that I just feel like we have to continue to press forward to support each other and to find ways of sustaining ourselves that don't require us to be on the teat, if you will, of the broader LGBT community, who are only going to selectively support when it benefits them and not when it makes them uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Well, I was having this conversation with my mother the other day, and she'll chime in after I voice this opinion. But we're talking about the original sin of America. We're talking about this racism. This stuff has been in place since 401 years ago. And we're in a war right now. We're in a revolutionary war right now. And I am tired of having these conversations. How long are we going to continue to beg the white man for the club, for their support, for all the above? We have to get to a point now where we separate, we engage, we educate, we enlighten, we rise up. We're going to have to build. We're going to have to get our own. And the only way we can get there is reading is the fundamental key to this war right here. We got to strategize. We can't beat them with money. We don't have the kind of money they have. So we have to strategize right now, because it would never be an easy solution for this age-old problem of racism. It's been here 401 years. So we're not going to have an easy solution. So we have to strategize, and we have to work together. But Black folk, I'm going to get on us, we have been taught systematically to hate each other. In the words of my great brother Malcolm X, who taught you to hate yourself? Somebody taught us. So until we come together as Black folk and work together, we're going to continue to fight against this white man, because they're bloodsuckers of the poor, and they're going to suck our blood until we come together. So we got work to do internally. And the battle is in us first. We got to take care of us first, and then we can go out and help each other. But we're going to have to read, and learn how to put our resources together, learn how to invest, send our people to law school, medical school, read, so we won't get the wrong facts of the coronavirus and we end up getting sick and hearing all these lies. So we have to put ourselves in positions. So the key to this war that we're in, pick a book up, let's start reading, let's work together, and then we won't have to ask the white man for nothing else.
I just want to piggyback on what you said about the why it's important that we have two prides. Because I know that was one of the things in Indiana. people looked at, well, why do you have to have a Black Pride or a Pride of color? I know for us that what we try to specialize in is try to do programming where we talk about financial literacy, how important it is to have a bank account and how important it is to have a savings account as a person of color. I know there are people that sit on the Pride board here that they say they're welcoming us to the table and say, hey, we want you guys to come to the table, but it's certain things you can say and you can't do while you're at this table. So I feel like if you're limiting what I can say and do for my Black Pride, for us as a person of color, then I don't want to be at your table. I'll just make sure that I lay my table out for my people, for us to eat just as well as like how they're doing it for their people. So I know for the clubs, like when we do our celebration weekend, I know we try to go to clubs and say, hey, can we have an event here or different things like that? And they say no. It goes back into the no hats and the no sagging. It's just two forms of identification and different things like that. So now we're moving into that, trying to go out and have a good time. So I think that it's very important. That's why we have Black Pride here in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thank you, Carl. Anyone else want to weigh on this question?
Hey, Lee Soldier. So I want to say that here in New York, I feel like racism around Pride started from day one. Exactly from the moment that Stonewall happened, and then Pride began to anniversary themselves and the march began to anniversary themselves. And we never took a step to acknowledge the trans people of color that started the movement. We already was down a bad path from there. And I feel like when the white community decided to take over organizing it and never paying tribute or homage or never asking us to come to the table, and not just Blacks, I'm gonna say everyone to come to the table, Spanish speaking people to come to the table, and trans people to have their own voice to come to the table, and ask the lesbian people to come to the table, to go into a room of Heritage of Pride and see 30 white men sitting there trying to organize an event and tell us what it should look like is problematic. And so it has always historically been that way. They invite us to come in as tokens, as others have said here, to be a part of the entertainment or to maybe to say a few words. So it kind of looks so disrespectful to say this is a movement that was born out of us. We started this movement. And now you're having us come here to perform for you. It's a problem. It's been a problem since day one.
So what's obvious to me from what I've heard everybody saying is that there's a common denominator in what we're hearing. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So you're talking to individuals from coast to coast, from the north to the south, to the east to the west, and we're all saying the same thing. But we've never had this conversation with each other before. So there seems to be some type of systematic organization in play that perhaps we don't know about, because we all have the same complaint. Our complaint is the same, the common denominator, how our pride started, what we're dealing with in our community. We're in the Deep South in Memphis, Tennessee. And I think that what it seems to me is that we really don't know how to deal with what we're facing right now. So in order for us to collectively get past this and to beat our enemy, we got to learn how to beat them another way. And it won't be out in the street face to face and trying to fight for something that don't belong to us. So this revolution that we have is that we got to get clear, real clear about who we are as a people, as a Black people, gay people, and that our existence and that our entitlement is worth fighting for. Our pride started the same way. Everything everybody has shared, we are experiencing in Memphis, Tennessee. We have one of the pillars of white supremacy where they withhold financial support. So if you can't get financial support, that means what? That your pride would not be successful because you can't host and put on the caliber of events that they can. But at the same time, hear me clear, because I said get clear, our community flood their events and support them, which gives numbers to the corporate America that want to see, okay, because most of them are just really interested in that if I can get my advertisement out there and how many people you're gonna attract. But if I'm not able to compete with them in sheer numbers, then I can't get those sheer dollars. So our people have to understand that when you do that, that you hurt us and be able to show that, hey, we can pull a 20,000 number crowd here and get that type of money that you will give for that type of support when you're talking about putting your signage, your logo on a signage, because we're talking about dollars here. And then we have people in our community that tend to think that this is all about capitalistic and capitalizing, when in actuality, the money is supposed to go back into the community. So you have these subsets that pop up and undermine out your pride in your own Black community, where we can't get to the table and help them understand. I'm not against nobody hustle, but at the same time, it hurt the community. So the young lady said earlier that they do programming. In Memphis, Tennessee, we have a very big educational forum here, where our community know how to party very well, right? That's something we don't even need to practice to help them to do. But at the same time, we need to help them also learn how to be self-sustaining. And that's the difference when we come together with our type of Black pride to show where we're lacking it. And that's why we have that Black on the front of it. And you're right, Lee, we did start it. And they did hijack it. But how did that happen? And until we can answer these questions collectively, we can't fight these people because they're too well equipped and too well organized. So we got to get ourselves together. And then when we come back to battle, everybody will have a role in this war on how we're going to defeat these people strategically right here. We got to outthink them.
Thank you, Gwen.
Can I piggyback on something Gwen said? I would like to add to this, to Gwen. Part of that too is everything you said was spot on. I think a lot of it is education. I think sometimes when I'm traveling and I'm helping other prides and other Black prides and stuff,
right,
to know that people do not know that the whole movement of pride started with us, that people don't know who Stormy De La Very is, that they don't know who Marsha P. Johnson is, that they don't know who Sylvia Rivera is a crime.
Right.
So they run to these other events because they're not educated on the real movement itself. And I'm here in New York and people still ask me, why are there two prides?
Right.
Or, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And here in New York, things are so expensive. The pride organization here that I compete with, they make $3 to $4 million every year. Mm-hmm. I struggle to raise $100,000 to do Black Pride. That's a huge difference.
Right.
That thing that you said about the money going back into the community is what they're supposed to do. They offer money to go back into the community, but it's like a work loan. And when I tell you they only give you between $3,000 to $5,000, you have to sometimes sit back and go, wait a minute, you are right. Where is all of that money going? So it's a mess all around.
Right.
Completely.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this?
I'll jump in. This is Kenya here in
Yes.
DC. Everything you guys have said has been completely accurate. We here in DC also are challenged with why are there two prides? Black Pride started here in DC, and people don't want us to have Black Pride. Members of our own community say that. The other day I challenged someone because they said, "Oh, don't give your money to prides," and I'm saying, why would you do that? We're having a pride for you, right? But it's a whole concept that all prides are, capitalistic, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, no, that's some prides are, but a lot of our smaller Black and brown prides are struggling to put on the events that we're putting on for you. So if you're telling your brothers and sisters to withhold your dollars, what do you think is going to happen to our pride? And to also piggyback on the thing that Lee Soldier said, it amazes me that so many people don't know that, the pride movement started with, you know, our Black and brown trans sisters. Like that's how it started, you know. And I did an interview for a news station, and I talked about that. And one of the reporters and I was talking was like, she was struggling trying to figure out how to say that because that's not commonly known. So she was trying to figure out how to find a balance. So we played around with some words, and you know, we ended up saying, trans women of color was at the forefront of the movement. And I was like, that's a shame that we can't straight up say we started the movement. Yeah. Because it's that lack of education. We don't know, you know, why we come together. We don't know why we're doing how this even started, you know. And every year we battle people saying, you know, why is there two prides? There's no need for Black Pride, et cetera, et cetera. We have a whole slew of workshops that, you know, people don't know. They know how to party. They know how to get to every club. They know how to buy their party passes. But in the same host hotel they staying in, they don't realize that there's a whole education component, and then go online and trash and say it's only about parties. That's our ongoing battle, right? But yeah, it's definitely a struggle that we all are facing, how to get all of our people on board and online to realize the importance of it. And my final thing is, this year we canceled DC Black Pride, right? And all those people that complained why we have Black Pride were the same ones out complaining, oh my God, I missed Black Pride this year. And I'm like, so now you see what would happen if we didn't have it, right? If this was an ongoing thing. We canceled this year because of the virus. But what if this never happened? You guys would all be complaining and trying to figure out your own space. So it's yeah, everything you guys are saying have all been it's all well tied in together, and we're all experiencing it across the board.
Anyone else?
I want to very quickly just piggyback on what Dr. Clemens was talking about with the self-hate. There are some things that I know we need to have some internal conversations with each other. I get the most criticisms about Black Pride from our own people.
Same here.
The mainstream Pride Motor City, they do not ask for your input. They do not ask what you think about it. They put together a program. It's a small committee of white men. They put together the program and they put it out there, and we come. Mind you, this Pride, Motor City Pride, they see about 500,000 people. We see about 10,000 people. And I think there's something to be said for really putting your support behind the organizations and the prides or what have you that are started by your own people, and that have your best interests at heart. There are no financial barriers to Hotter Than July. Everything is free. Also, I think there are some internal conversations that we need to be having with our cisgender, heterosexual Black brothers and sisters, particularly those in the faith community. Because until you subscribe to the fact that all Black Lives Matter, you're shouting Black Lives Matter, you're marching, has no power, right? And so we know in our churches, we the Black LGBT plus community, fill their pews, line their pockets, do their wives' hair and makeup, and please God, stop sleeping with them if they're going to get on a stage and call you a faggot. Stop going to their national conventions if you're going to be called a faggot. And that's all. Please give my regards to the general board of the Church of God in Christ.
Kenya and C. Someone's asked. We've had some questions from some of our viewers, but unfortunately, I can't. They flashed up too quickly, so I don't see the question. Could one of you read the question for our panel?
Sure. So I have a couple things. There's a couple of statements, but I will start off with the question. Do you think we can now make a case about how systematic racism and homophobia, among other intersections of oppression, matter in Black LGBTQ people? So will making that case matter?
I was just going to talk about that because of a conversation that we had Wednesday, and I talked about it again Thursday. about how, like, even with Stonewall, you have women of color who started that. Black Lives Matter was started by two queer women, two queer black women, another. And we keep finding ourselves having to be trying to get permission to be involved in things that we created. So, like, I'm very irritated with our other cisgender heterosexual Black brothers and sisters when you have people like Ayana who were killed and other trans women were killed, and they say absolutely nothing about them, like they're not even worthy of even a side note or a mention. But we were the ones who started the Black Lives Movement to begin with. So then we let other people hijack our stuff. The white folks hijack, the pride. The Black folks have hijacked BLM, and it's like we're all human. So, like, Kenya, what you're saying, like, people talk about Black Lives Matter. Black lives don't matter until all Black lives matter. I live in Alabama, which is a buckle of the Bible Belt, like literally, and it's rusty. So, like, just because someone identifies a certain way, all of a sudden they're not worthy of even the respect or just being helped or just not being killed. All that stuff is magnified by our skin color. Because I'm gonna tell you something I realized last year. People love crying that I'm a minority. You have white women who say that they are minorities. You have a lot of people who claim minority status. But let me tell you what happens when minority status intersects with whiteness. They are minorities when it's convenient, but they are white all the time. So I can be a gay white man and, oh my God, I'm being oppressed by the straight people. But the minute something comes against Black Lives Matter, them Negroes going to have to figure that shit out on their own. And we get that all the time. And it's like, and I'm tired of having to explain that and beg for spaces at tables. And I don't want to create another movement like Black Lives Movement, but we need to at least try to get back in it without having to ask for permission. Like, one of my friends asked, like, how do we get permission? Why do we ask for permission for something that we started? It's like trying to get permission to walk back into your house. And I think that, I'm a little radical and I'm a little loud, but, I just think that we need to stop asking people and just take our shit back. Like, it's not that hard. Why there doesn't need to be 2 prizes? It can be 50 prizes. And you can focus on what you want to focus on, but I'm focusing on the intersectionalities that disproportionately affect Black people. We can't just go get in a damn parade and think everything's okay, because when we come back, our lives might be off. Somebody might have killed someone. I might not have a job because I show my face at this parade. So I mean, our issues are different. So if you're creating events and you don't like encompass all of the issues that affect the people that are going, why invite them in the first place? Like, what's the point? So don't tell me why is it? Because you're not addressing my issues. You're not addressing my issues. And again, that goes for our white gay people and our heterosexual Black people. It's like, what the heck? What's going on with y'all?
Thank you, Tony.
I think we can, right now in this time we're in, I think the pain of the Black LGBTQ community and the pain of our heterosexual sisters and brothers is a powerful platform for leadership. So I think that pain is a universal language and it connects and it brings people together. So this pain centralizes our human story. So now is the time to bring these conversations up, because I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I'm Black, I'm gay, but I don't want to have to fight with my sisters and brothers. And so the goal should be to stop the spilling of the blood and build life. So that should be the whole goal right there, because we see the blood on America's hands. Hell, killing Black folks is a hobby in America and been a hobby for the last 401 years. So that ain't gonna stop no time soon. It ain't the police, it's the system. So we have to stop the spilling of the blood and come together and let's build life. And we have to do this. And I think now is the time. George Floyd death has brought a lot of attention to the businesses, to our Black homophobic sisters and brothers, our Black homophobic LGBT sisters and brothers. So now is the time for all of us to come together at this table and have this hard conversation, because damn it, race matters in America. And I don't care what nobody say, bring the white folks to the table, but we have to have these conversations. Like right now, this, in my opinion, the next meeting we have, Earl, bring some white heterosexual people in the room, bring some Black heterosexual people in the room, bring everybody in the room. Let's have this damn hard conversation to hear their side, they can hear our side, and we come to a common solution, because if they're not in the room, they can't speak, because I demand to be in these rooms being gay and Black when they start making these decisions. And I think that's where we can start right there.
That's a great idea. And I have another.
Want to be in the
Go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. But I feel like I'm just want to say what Dr. D said. They have to want to be in the room. You know, I can offer to say, hey, I want you to come and I want to have this discussion with you, and I want you to, you know, see where I'm coming from, and I want to look at it at your perspective. But they have to want to. I think that's where the big thing that's happening in Indianapolis, Indiana is you have to want to be in the room. You're telling me you want to be in the room, and then when we set up meetings and different things, I don't see I'm looking at somebody that looks like me. And that's scared to say what can we do for us? They want to know what can we do for us, not what can we do for people of color. You're Black, you can say it. Hey, what can we do for? They want to know what we can do for us. So I just feel like that they have to want to be in the room.
So this is my follow-up question. There's been a lot of conversations. There's been a lot of white people and white businesses who want to have conversations with Black folks or say that, and some of these conversations are taking place. In your cities, have you been having conversations? Has anyone been coming to you saying they want to talk about systemic racism and problems we've had with law enforcement? Has that conversation been taking place at all?
Yes, I've had.
Yeah, here in Kansas City, I mean, we're dealing with that right now. We have 2 police officers who have just been charged by the county prosecutor, who's our district attorney for the state, for slamming the head of a Black trans woman on the concrete. And I think that happening just prior to everything with George Floyd has really kind of brought a lot of attention to what needs to be done. But I'm not interested personally, and I'm not speaking for anybody but myself and my organization. I'm not interested in having conversations that do not also have deliverables and outcomes associated with them. I'm tired. It's an emotional lift. It's laborious. And unless we are saying to these folks who are coming to the table who were invited or required by whatever other means, I, for my part, am only interested in addition to that conversation about racism and how it looks and the impact of it, we're also talking about paid trainings. We're also talking about additional funding for things like Black Pride and things like programming. So the conversations are happening because the white guilt is peaked. And for those where it's just not white guilt and it may be an awakening and an awareness of trying to figure out where they get in and can fit in and can be supportive, I'm really engaged with helping them to see the 4 or 5 different kind of ways they can do that. But I personally am just no longer interested in just the conversation. I want to know how we begin to move the needle so that we have systemic change, that we don't end up back in this place with 5 or 10 years from now or months from now. So I'm a little bit passionate about it because if we keep talking, I don't mean we, this collective, but more broadly, we talk about having the conversation, but the problem with the conversation is you can walk away from it and never have to do anything with it. It might impact your thought process and your actions. It might not. But when you have a list of things that you are held to account for, there's some capstones and benchmarks, then we're making some progress. We can measure you against that. If we can say, you said you would do this in that conversation, here's what you actually did. Or here's where we started with this, and here's where we actually are and where we need to be. Sorry, Regina, I may have stepped on you there.
No, you're good. But listen, I was saying that since starting Charleston Black Pride here, I've seen some allies, actually reach out, ask me to be on panels to speak about my perspective of the LGBTQ of color issues, so I mean, we've getting some traction, but it was you have to step out and do it. Now I've had some conversation with people who are Black heterosexuals, and then of course when you talked about the church and this being the holy city, of course, I mean, I just ran an election and I know quite a few of the reasons of why people didn't vote for me, because I stood on the principles of who I am. If I'm going to be Black, I'm a lesbian, and I'm a woman. Those are already, as they would consider, 3 strikes against me. But guess what? I am who I am, and I'm not going to hide that. And as I was running this race, I also brought along Charleston Black Pride because of the simple fact I might not have won the race, but Charleston Black Pride, they know is here, and they know we are here to stay. So that was one of the things that I wanted to also capitalize on, and to show people that we're here. And we're doing all the work that we necessarily need to do. So today I was awoken by a restaurant who's actually hosting for Rosé Wine Day, where they're giving money to Charleston Black Pride. Well, they're running a fundraiser for Charleston Black Pride and for the NAACP. So I was totally shocked. you know, and when someone texted me and showed me, and I was like, that is great. And that's a step because we only 1 year in. And the pushback from when I was stepping out, I had to do a couple of articles and things like that to let people know I was serious, that I wanted to see change. And I wanted them to know that there are Black people who are gay here in the city and that you're not going to silence them anymore. You know, we even have a gay pastor of color here. And I mean, it's just like, you can see the white LGBTQ church thriving, and he has about 6, 7 members. I don't care what the issues may be or what the situation is. It's the look, because that's what people look at first. These are things that's not being supported and uplifted here. You know, and like everyone wanted to say, oh, you stepping out and, you know, you never know how this may be. Let me tell you, I tell them, if God be for me, ain't nothing else behind can change that. So that's why I say I keep uplifting what is here and supporting. And I'm telling you, I've seen the awakening coming, and it's going to be more. COVID-19 started it. And sad that George Floyd started, it's continuing it. And now, like you said, Dr. Clemens, we have to find out our own issues before we can expect anyone else to come in along, because they don't know what, we don't want them coming in again, taking over. We want to be able to say, this is your purpose and why we need you here. This is what you can help to do. But we already got our strategic plan down. We have broken all the barriers for our systematic racism that we see even in policing. We've had a trans murdered here. And I was glad that the outpour of AFA and other organizations that came together, the Alliance for Full Acceptance, came together to make sure that we uplift this trans Black woman that was murdered. But my thing is, I don't want you to come just for a murder. I want you to come for something minute, as when I'm having a home buyers training. You know, when I say that we need to make sure you standing on putting safe spaces in schools. So I want that to keep being a linkage and keep growing. So that's why I said, don't close your mouth. Don't be silent. Keep on speaking out. And like I said, what we get is always going to be that much better than where we was at.
Thank you, Regina. Thank you.
Let me jump in on this and give back a little bit off Regina.
One second there, so we are hitting the 4 o'clock hour, but thank you to Danny and the National Transgender March team. They've allowed us to extend it because the conversation is so rich. So I just want to let you know we're not on the time limit anymore. We were, but they extended it.
So keep talking. Keep talking.
Keep talking. And also to continue putting, we're getting a lot of questions and all the comments. So anyone that's watching on Facebook, please put them in the comment section of your feed. We'll get to them. Thank you. That's all I want to.
Right. So I heard a very, very profound proverb, and I just want to just add a little richness to what you said, Regina. It says a people who give up on themselves will rely on outside institutions to create order. So for us, we got to understand that what we aiming for and what we're yearning for and what our soul is crying for is not going to come outside. We're going to have to fix this as a community. And so you said that Trayvon Martin and George Floyd started it. No, these revolutions was Black Panther started one. Fannie Lou started one. Harriet Tubman started one. But what we forget and what people don't understand is that when you're in war and you got a revolution, you got to be dedicated and you got to be diligent. The arc of the revolution is longer than the protest, right? So even though when the protests stop, people go away. But there's still some of us that's central to the figure that are advocates in our community, and they're still out here fighting. So when we look around and everybody go home because the news cameras aren't showing what's going on around anymore, then all of the motivation goes away. So that's when you have surface purpose people out here. But for those of us that are into transformation, we know that it is not motivational. So for us, we have a magazine, the Unleashed Voice, Black LGBTQ publication. And when I was doing research before we started this publication, I found out that the Black LGBTQI+A elemental PQ spends over $800 billion a year. Okay? You're talking about consumers. You're talking about capital right here in our community. You understand? So we have the resources. We have the financial wealth to make any kind of move that we want to make in this country. If we want to boycott and stand up and say we're not going to do it, it got to be a collective whole thing done to say we're going to shut it down, period. And that's just from in our community. You're talking about money, and they know this. Why do you think, I'm finna go on a limb, Earl, why do you think Gilead pumps money with PrEP in our community? Look at the dollars, right? And not only them, look at Mercedes is running a thing for Pride about Mercedes-Benz doing Pride, okay? They're courting us because they know that we aren't producers, we're consumers. So if they can constantly keep us outside looking in the window, like let us in, they win. And until we realize collectively where our power is and where our powers stand and to take it back and to learn how to make that dollar work for us instead of giving it away, making it rain. No, I don't want to make it rain. I want a rain bucket, to catch the rain. So that's where we got to transform our mind and our thinking. We got to, because there's no enemy outside. The enemy is inside. And if you say it fast enough, enemy, you'll begin to see who the enemy really is.
Oh, wow.
So come on, folks. We got to stop blaming everybody else. We got to clean up.
Thank you, Gwen. And don't forget Nat Turner. We keep forgetting Nat Turner.
Nat Turner, put him in there. Mega Eggers. MLK Jr. right here, got killed right here in Memphis, Tennessee. So we've been in the revolution, my sister. The people just keep forgetting that it's not a quick race. It's a marathon. And I hope that I see it happen in my lifetime. Everything that we're here talking about today, that it come to pass. I say it.
Hey, Gwen.
Kenya, wait a minute. I'm going to get Kenya to get some questions first because there have been a bunch of people. Can you give us some questions from people who have been tuned in?
Sure. Let me scroll back a little bit. Thank you for the critical discussion. Protest should be $365 a year. It's been actually a lot of statements.
Okay, that's fine.
Confirming and agreeing with everything you all are saying.
First of all, before Tony speaks, I want to respond to Dr. Clemens, Reverend Dr. Clemens' suggestion. So I hear you clearly. The next time we have this roundtable, we will have members of cisgender, heterosexual, Black folks, men and women, because it's easy to find the women as allies. We need the straight men there, and have some white folks as well, men and women, and have a broader conversation because we tend to speak to each other a lot, and the fact is that it's not our responsibility to dismantle racism. We didn't create it. It's not our responsibility. And I don't know about any of you, but I'm tired of teaching white folks how to treat me like a human being when it's easy. Ending discrimination and racism is the easiest thing to do. Treat people decently. Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's not very complex.
I do have a
simple
question.
principle.
How do we get more voices in these rooms? How do we move from tokenism to inclusion?
Earl, can I speak to what you just said very quickly? First of all, I really want to thank everyone for inviting me, a Latino, to be part of this discussion. I think part of the issue here is the word racism. What racism is a euphemism. Racism is a nice way of speaking to something that is really difficult to talk about in this society. Because what racism really is white supremacy. Racism is basically a philosophy, a theology, a way of living that suggests that everything white is beautiful, is brilliant, is valuable. And the other side to that in American society is that everything African, everything Black is devalued, dehumanized, and degraded. That's what racism is. And when you take the euphemism out, you see the fundamental challenge that's confronting our people. The reality is, I'm a Puerto Rican American. For the last 2 generations, there have been activists in my community that have been trying to undo white supremacy in the Puerto Rican community. And the farthest we've gotten in the last 2 generations is that we now honor African culture, African music. Yet people of African descent, Black Puerto Ricans, still have the highest incidence of drug abuse. They still have the highest incidence of college dropouts and high school dropouts and unemployment. They still are the people that we continue to overlook and devalue. That's the reality. The other reality is that in order to undo that, exactly as Reverend Dr. Clemens said, part of that action is undoing the venom, the poison that we have lived with inside ourselves. Exactly as Gwen said, part of that is an internal cleaning. We need to undo those shackles of oppression that we've accepted. And by the way, that is why the Black Prides are doing something. That's creating a space where we can celebrate our beauty, we can celebrate our culture, we can celebrate our history, we can celebrate our brilliance, we can celebrate all that we are, and in doing so, undo all that internal damage. So please do not act like you're doing nothing. You're doing a lot. And what you need to do is expand and deepen the work that you've all been doing for practically a generation. God bless you for that work. God bless you.
Thank you for that.
Tony, you were about to say something.
There we go. Oh, there I am. Okay, I think it was Dr. Clemens or Gina who had mentioned about loving ourselves. And, we've been taught, since we got here that we were not valuable, that we were not valued, that we were treated less than human. Black families were separated during our period of enslavement. Now modern day, even when you look at the welfare system, it's set up so that Black fathers will not be in the homes with their children. And so we have been taught to hate ourselves. And the reason why that's so important for my conversation I'm about to have now is when we first started Birmingham Black Pride, we got a little pushback from the white community, but who we got the biggest pushback from? The Black community. Literally, if it was not for Black lesbians in Birmingham, our first Pride would have failed. But, we spend too much time, boosting our egos, trying to figure out, what's in this for me, instead of looking at our community as a whole. We have got to realize that we got to end the acceptance of the indoctrination that we are not worthy and we are not, good enough. So before we can even tackle any of the other stuff that we're trying to tackle, we got to do a little bit of internal house cleaning. And it's a difficult conversation for people to have. And I really struggle with whether or not I should even bring it up now. But I think it was Reverend William Barber. He had given this explanation of who's against women's autonomy for their body when it comes to reproductive health. Who's against the LGBTQ people? Who's against poor people? Who's against Black people? It's all the same people. They are all the same people. And they're unified. And the thing that bothers me really a lot about our ultra progressives is it's our way or the highway. That's an unsustainable idea in a thought pattern for such a diverse group of people. We said that the Democrats are the big tent party, which we really not. It's still the same small tent. You just put a couple of pictures up to make people think that they got some type of inclusion, but it's really not.
Mirrors. It's called mirrors. You put mirrors up.
Yeah, it's still old, male, and white. Look at that. That's what it is. But they tried to fool us like we included. But the problem goes back to we get divided on too many things. Black, cisgender, heterosexual Christians in the South are totally anti-abortion. You line up with who? The Republicans on that. Queer LGBTQ people who are white in the South who are racist. You know what? You line up with the conservatives on that. When you look at, I tell people all the time, a lot of my older Black people, if the Republicans were able to figure out how to include social programs, we would lose a lot of Black folks. We would lose a lot of Black people. That's the key to really just destroying us right now. Because when you talk about those good old Christian values that are based on a misinterpretation of the Bible, which really perpetuates hate, Like that's what our churches are going through. We have this thing right now in Birmingham where there's a church, a mega church called the Church of the Highlands. I've been telling people the pastor was racist for years. But Pastor Chris don't talk about gay people. He don't talk about black issues. Yeah, there's a reason. Watch what they don't say. Just don't listen to what they say. But we have to figure out how I can say, I may not be necessarily pro-abortion, but I do believe it's a woman's right to determine what she wants to do with her body. So I can walk down the road with you on that until my feet start hurting a little bit. But we just can't say, well, the Lord said abortion is wrong, I can't vote for that. No. What other issues is that person fighting for? We cannot be one issue voters, which is what a lot of the conservatives, they are one issue voters. You get them on that one issue and you take them down the road. We can't afford to do that because our tent is supposed to be bigger than that. And when there's a give and take, there's a compromise. And until we realize that, we're going to keep losing. We're going to keep losing just on the basic front, not even the LGBTQ issue, just being black in this country. I mean, and we need to understand that. And I don't think people take enough time to realize that that's our biggest issue. That shouldn't be a problem with me and black people who go to church. We are black. White people don't like all of us.
Can I jump in, Earl?
Yes, of course. Jump in, Reverend.
I've
we got all these reverends around here. This is I know this all. That we got a lot of ministers.
I know one of them.
There's in my good Baptist fashion, I want to have 3 points, but I will keep it quite brief. There is a burning in my heart right now because I think that part of this conversation around racism within the LGBTQ community, particularly for those as Black folks, has to also lift up sexualized racism. The way in which sexism intersects with racism. And so even with this roundtable we have here, there are 3 women, right, here represented in leadership.
Well, because this point of information is that we put it out to all our members and you're the ones who said yes.
I understand that. And what I'm going to also say is that even within the Black community, the role of women and the Black LGBTQ community, the role of lesbian women, same gender loving women, the way that we party, the way that we gather, most oftentimes falls along gender lines, right? True. And we have to then wrestle with, right? This is not an indictment. So for all of us on this roundtable and all the folks watching, this is not an indictment. This is a lifting of a reality that those of us who are leaders of Black prides across this country have to also wrestle and reckon with within the construction of substantive and relevant responses to political moments that we are currently in, right? And what we are currently in is a recrudescence of anti-Blackness that we are all quite familiar with, and that we are then, for the first time, putting our queerness into the mix, and we're no longer being silent. So then we are in the line of, this is my second point, in the line of what Rashawn said earlier, being pushed to then say, what is our agenda? What is it, the things that we want to actually have accomplished? And what does that look like? I know we here in Richmond, we had to cancel our Pride this year, which would have been our 3rd one. But now in this moment, our team is being forced to reckon with now addressing the political part, right? We have to address how we want our white allies and all of this white guilt that's pouring forth. And we thank you for the ways that people are showing up now. And we want this to be transformative, which I believe Gwen raised that term earlier. So I just want to raise, my first point was, that kind of sexualized racism or racialized sexism and the way that shows up within the Black LGBTQ community and the way that we need to wrestle with that. And our need to have to decide what are our outcomes, or what are our prides uniquely positioned to be able to do to make change, and what are the straight Black orgs who are inclusive, who are clearly responsive to being able to work with Black prides or work with Black LGBTQ folks in equitable ways, right? In affirming ways to be able to work together. So our umbrella nonprofit is us giving Richmond connections. And we have been forced in this moment to make those connections, to really realize and to call on and hold those Black leaders, right? Who are often straight. Many times they are of faith, accountable to the fullness of our whole community, right? And what that means and what is the inner work that we then have to do. And I guess the last part has been for us, you know, in Richmond and me personally as a, you know, as a leader in this moment, as a co-founder of Black Pride, as a faith leader, is this idea of how much am I willing to give up in order to get the movement, to progress the movement. I still need to take care of my soul and my heart. I'm not giving y'all everything. I don't care if I ain't birthed a human. I got me. And I'm gonna take care of me, and I'm gonna take care of the other people that are important to me. So the other thing that I think we just have to realize, those of us that are leaders, those of us that started our prides, that have been doing this thing, that are committed to our communities, that we also need to be like, you done came as far as I'm gonna let you go right now. Let me take my 8 minutes and 46 seconds for myself.
Protect yourself, protect your space.
Exactly.
And you know what? And I'm going to, we're getting near a time because there's some other things people have to do. But I want to say something to Reverend L about women in the Black Pride movement. I want to speak specifically to that. If it were not for lesbian and bisexual women in DC, Black Pride would have been held in my backyard 3 or 4 years, because the women come I tell people, build your business on lesbians. Build your business, because they're loyal, they'll stick with you. Every time someone's throwing a party in Puerto Rico or Miami, all the gay men leave. They don't come to DC. But the women come every year, year after year after year. So the first thing that happens at Black Pride, I'm speaking in Kenya's territory, we plan stuff for women first.
Yes.
That's the first thing we do. Because in a business framework, the women are the ones who support us, and women make it happen. And if not one guy comes, we know we'll have 10, 15,000 women. And so that's not because we're being equitable, that's being business smart. And it just shows, it so happens it's equitable. And we're doing the same thing for gender nonconforming people. We have one of the few, if not the only gender nonconforming party of any pride, Black, white, whatever. And the room was packed. And someone asked me who was there. I said, I looked in, there were lots of men and women. I don't know who was who, but I don't have to. They were having a lot of fun.
That's right.
And the last thing I want to ask, the last question, and then I'm going to summarize real quickly what our next steps are going to be based on what I've heard. I want to hear from everyone what they're doing to take care of themselves during this time of troubles. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Well, for me, I stay busy. If I'm not being creative or productive, then I feel like I'm not doing anything productive with my time. So I like having things to do, having things on my plate. But I'm also enjoying this quarantine. I'm still on stay-at-home orders with my wife.
Okay.
So we've been home 3 months. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, since March. Hey, it's lockdown time. I really enjoying bonding with her again. We've been together 11 years, so it's just really good and refreshing for the relationship. And just meeting people that I probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to meet had it not been for the pandemic. So the pandemic has really been good for me. Because I probably wouldn't have time to do this right now, to get on this panel with you all, because we had a radio show on Saturday. So it's been really good meeting people, connecting with people. I think people's passion has risen to a level that we can really cross over what we're trying to cross over. So me personally, I haven't slowed down. I just like staying busy.
Okay, excellent. Who's next?
I'll jump in next. This is Kenyon here in DC. I'm the same exact way. I'm busy. The busier I am, the better I am. Because when I'm not busy, I feel like there's something that I should be doing in that time. Right. But when I'm not busy, all right, which is very few times that I'm not busy doing something, my family has been blessed with a bunch of babies over the past 4 or 5 years. So you know, when I'm having a tough day, what they do is they'll FaceTime me and I'll sit and chat with the babies for like an hour. And, you know, we talking about whatever. I talk to them, they're grown people, like they signing contracts going to college. Mind you, they're like 4 or 5 years old, but it always like warms my heart. And it also reminds me that I need to continue what I'm doing and continue the fight, because I don't want them to have to go through what I'm going through now. Like when they're adults, I want the world to be better. So it's also like a reminder, re-energizes me. So like, okay, can you keep on doing so you can make the world a better place for these young kids that are 4 or 5? And I think I have one that's like 2 weeks. I have a nephew that's like 2 weeks
Yes,
old.
he's 2 weeks, Kenya.
2 weeks. So that's how I get through. I'm getting through all of this right now. It's the babies and work.
Well, I've been out doing community work, doing a feeding program, giving out groceries. I've done a adopt a grandparent at one of our seniors. I like staying busy as well. So I'm keeping in tune with my community. But I also get some self-care days. So I go by the water. Charleston is known for that. And really just take in that time to rejuvenate myself so I can come back better. So
I think for me, I know everybody is busy. I know what I've recently just started doing. I take every Tuesday for a self-care day where I don't look at emails, I don't check phone calls, I don't even like, hey, I do what I want to do on this Tuesday. I'm an educator, so I'm out for the summer. So I'm off work until August. So I just feel like once I got off of work, I went back to work for Indiana Pride of Color and just been running, and I'm excited to be in this movement. So I'm not taking away from that, but I know Tuesdays are my day, my self-care days, and it's just about me.
I tend to be a lot like Carl. I have what I call Me Day Monday, and that helps me set the tone for my week. And I'm I fiercely enforce those boundaries with family, friends, and colleagues. But the main way I'm getting through this is by giving myself permission to unplug and to just not give a flip. I mean, I know that sounds radical or even dismissive, but I'm not surprised that we're all people who like to be busy and doing things, but giving myself permission to just say, nope. My mother calls it the tyranny of the urgent. That can wait. If the world falls apart because I didn't respond to an email, whatever, it'll be okay. And the world hasn't fallen apart. We all right.
Yeah, I'm definitely unplugging as well. Mainly from the news, to be honest. I'm a news junkie. I watch the news 24/7 all day. So honestly, just unplugging from the news, not being able to see exactly what is going on in the world and have to digest that and then deal with reality of what's going on in my life at the moment. So that's my sanity keeper.
Well, like a lot of you, I like to stay busy as well. One of the things about the work that I do is that it merges my professional and social life. And when COVID happened, I was afraid, that would go away. But what I found is that I've been just as busy working from home. I'm very fortunate, that when COVID did happen, no one in my organization was laid off, furloughed, or anything like that. And so my focus then turned to assisting other people in staying connected, because I realized that everyone isn't as well connected as some of us are, and are very well much isolated. So we started a program called the Brother to Brother Lockdown. It's a weekly Zoom show, and it's all about us getting through COVID together. And then I'm very fortunate, Elder Gwen, my boyfriend, drove all the way up here from North Carolina, and he's been with me for over a month. And so that time has been great to bond with him again. He takes really good care of me. I've been going on and off camera because he wanted to make sure I got something to eat. And so I'm glad to have that kind of relationship, and all these things that have been working together to make sure that we stay mentally and physically fit.
I have I use the Liberate app and value guided meditations as a way to just simply be still for a moment. So that has been a way that has been helping me. But also I have to shout out my team at Black Pride RVA UGRC. To have a team that you can trust so that as a leader you don't feel like you got to make all the decisions or do all of the things is an act of self-care, because that means that you have not only affirmed and equipped them, but you've also as a leader done your job to ensure that they have the training so that when you need to step away, or you don't have to, or I personally don't have to feel like I have to be a part of every single thing, that has been a major point of how I've learned to take care of myself in this time. And then listen, I keep my I got 2, sometimes 3 consistent happy hour calls with my community of accountability, where we are drinking spirited beverages and talking all types of manner of things of grown folks talk, and it is a blessing to my soul. So I ensure that I keep those appointments because that connection is so important. So those are the ways that I've staying to take care of myself.
Anyone? Oh, go ahead, Tony.
So I'm glad that Reverend Gwen had mentioned about still working. I can't unplug, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that people have to figure out what they need to do to make it through. Like, I've always been very active, so like being idle, it actually gives me more stress than doing work. So like during this time, like my work schedule has not varied that much. I spend a lot of my time helping people, whether it's delivering food to people, finding medicines for people, and that's just with my regular job. Now with our Birmingham Black Pride thing, our Pride is in August, but like Thursday night, we had this great concert featuring Dominique Posey. He's a local artist here that was on American Idol. It was a great show. Like, it was very well produced, and things like that, just to keep other people occupied. And I have so many things. I remember when this first all started, people were like, well, if you don't create a business, then you wasting this downtime. I'm like, this, and if I can just not die, like that's my goal during COVID-19, is just not to die. And I think if I can do that, then I've been pretty damn successful. But I've also written a book, and I'm not telling you need to write a book, but I just wrote a book that I'm in the process of editing, and I'll probably publish next month. But I have to keep busy, otherwise I go into dark places in my mind. There are so many things right now that are just so like reminiscent of the beginning, the formings of Nazi Germany. I don't know if y'all have ever read Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. They have a show on it on Hulu now. But just thinking about, if you get a chance, well, you might not want to read it. But in The Handmaid's Tale, like civil society breaks down because of 3 things: too much religion and the bastardization of Christianity. They kill the president, they slaughter the Congress, and they blow up the Supreme Court. Now, these are all allegories and metaphors at this point, but look at our 3 branches of government: shitty, shitty, and shitty. And then you go into martial law, and they turn the United States into this country called Gilead, which is a monotheocratic,
Tony, we're supposed to be talking about things that we're doing to relax.
Well, I just don't read that book. Don't read that book.
Because you're making me tense.
I'm actually reading that book right now.
I'm done. Don't read that book. Don't read it. It'll drive you crazy.
I'm halfway through it. I'm there with you.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken?
Well, I like to say I'm really happy to hear everybody speaking about how they are able to take time out for themselves for self-care. And I preach it all the time, but I have to be completely honest to say that I don't necessarily execute that. I feel like I work all the time. I can't really unplug because one of the things I've done here to my philosophy around Black Pride here is that, we need to be proud all the time and not just during August, during Black Pride Week. And teaching young people about more or less about trying to have more pride in themselves and the history of this things that's happened in this country, that Black LGBT people are part of that fiber that built America, right? So And the things that we're celebrating, they need to celebrate, and the education point of it. And so I've gotten involved in a lot of things. I partner and I make sure that I do have a seat at the table at all these places. I also want to check a box and say, because I noticed somebody made a comment about it, reading to the stuff, but sometimes also I have to make sure that I'm always in that space saying, I don't forget my male privilege, because I know that a lot of these pride organizations are run by males. And I always am very consistent with my own committee to say it's not a Black gay male trying to dictate what a lesbian event looks like. It's not a Black gay male trying to dictate what a trans event should be and this and that, and trying to make sure that I'm not complaining to the white people about lack of diversity and inclusiveness. And then on my own committee and board, I'm not issuing those same practices and things. So it becomes hard sometimes to unplug when you're completely doing so much and being involved in the ballroom community and doing a history project and trying to open up the center and trying to do 101 things. I have to say, it sounds great to me in theory. I'm learning sometimes to turn my phone off. But then I just feel like the process begins again when I turn everything back on and I got 100 emails and messages and stuff to answer. Then I feel like I'm playing catch up and never at that space again. So I congratulate you all if you are in that place that you are able to do that, because sometimes I'm envious of that. Like, I know that I can't help others if I can't help myself, but I'm completely always running, always.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone else has not spoken?
Well,
Okay.
I have just recovered from meniscus knee surgery, and so my surgery has slowed me down tremendously. And it came at the right timing. So I'm not at working in my 9 to 5 as a police. I've been at home recovering. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I've been on these Zoom meetings like every day of the week, but my surgery slowed me down.
Well, good. You need to be slowed down a little bit.
Amen.
Anyone else? Okay. This has been very enlightening for me. This has been very informative. I hope the people who are listening to this also have found this informative and enlightening. I think that the next steps are very clear. The next steps are that we need to reconvene and have this conversation with our straight brothers and Black brothers and sisters and our white allies. And that's going to be my project over the next week or so, pulling us back together and having this discussion to people who need to hear it and be part of the discussion as we broaden our reach and we broaden our scope of what our community needs. And finally, I want to say that I want to thank each of you for making the time on a Saturday afternoon to come on this and have this discussion and to share your personal stories and share what you're doing in your communities. One of my proudest parts of my job is when I talk, the CBE is only strong because you're strong. And the CBE is only exists because you exist and you are doing the work. And I get a chance to brag about it and talk about it and to lift it up. And I would just want to encourage each of you to take care of yourselves, but continue to doing your work that you're doing because you're making a difference and people are watching and people are talking about it. Yes. So please know that you are saving lives and you're building community. And on that note, I will adjourn and I will go out to my patio and have a drink.
Before everyone goes, again, I want to echo Earl's sentiments and thanking everyone for joining us this evening. It was a very rich conversation. Rashawn, I saw your next steps in the chat box. Can you email them to me so we can, reconvene and talk about them? Also, I just want to also say the National Trans Visibility March is hosting Echoes, the LGBTQ plus tribute on their Facebook page. So please go over and take a look. It's happening right now because we kind of went over a little bit.
And thank you, National Transgender Visibility March, for allowing us to share this space with them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I can say.
You.
Have a good evening,
Have a good
everybody.
night.
Be safe.